Okay, so far you've seen me make the tentacle. You've seen me add and apply a tiny little bit of extra detail using small spheres of clay, rolling those in my hand and then adding them on. I haven't scored and slipped in these videos, but you must remember that you slip everything, score and slip everything, no matter how small, even if it's applying small objects to the bigger objects that are then going to be applied to the clay. Otherwise, like Miss said last week, it will fall off in the kiln. So we've seen how to make little spheres. I just want to show you one more thing when it comes to adding coral-like structures. So if you've got some clay and you've made it into a flattened sphere like this, if you hold it in your hand carefully and you grab a tool and you start to press out the tool, a bit like making a slip pot but on a tiny scale, okay? And you're allowed to make it look more like a bowl this time, because I remember last week we said don't make your slip pots into bowls and too flat, but this is up to you at this stage. And you can flatten it out, just move it with your fingers, maybe moulding it round, and you'll create a tiny little disc like that. And then you can go further, and if you've got a really nice sharp knife and gently, you can even add further detail maybe from the centre, thinking about how detailed Yelena James's work is and how much detail she goes into. You could build in little bits of coral like this as well, scoring and slipping really gently on the back and then adding that up. And again, what works really well is if you imagine you have lots of these all over that area built up like a coral reef, it'll look really nice. So that's another little one you can do. Don't just think, oh, I have to make these spheres. And remember, don't just think I have to make spheres and leave them as spheres. Always thinking, how can I add a bit more detail on? And this really is very gently. If you do this, it's not going to work as well, okay? You want to do it gently to add that detail, okay? Right, moving on to a starfish then. So you will need a piece of clay, okay? You will probably, I'm just going to flatten it a little bit, and you will need to roll it out, not too thin and definitely not too thick. Okay, 1 and 2, using your guides if you need to. My guides are thinner than the ones in school, so I don't word for word this. If you think it's too thick, then you need to just, as Miss said last week, take it off, have a look, and then roll it out without the guides in place, okay? So once we've got some nice flat clay, we're going to get our knife and we're going to attempt to cut out a starish sort of shape. So some points, and the best thing about clay is, you know when you always have trouble drawing a star, the good thing is when it's in clay we can squidge it into the right shape anyway, so don't worry too much like that. It's a very smallish triangle coming off that area of the star, but that's okay, we can make that into a better shape in a second. So a starfish then has arms and legs that are not quite starish, but definitely in the same amount of them, the same shape to start with. They're definitely more moulded round, so as you can see, what I'm doing now is lengthening them out a little bit and just making sure they're rounded and more natural looking. If your clay is wet enough and your star isn't quite right, you can just score and slip and blob an extra bit of the leg onto there. And then you can see how I'm working quite fast. Like Miss said, I'm working fast so the video doesn't go on so long, but you can take a bit more time, okay? And even just things like adding that little extra flair of curling them slightly will build up a really nice, more natural looking starfish. Okay, and then this one here. And round like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now what you can do is you can have it flat like that, or you can start to think, I know that from the tonal drawings I've done that starfish actually have a bit of build up in the middle. So again, score and slip a piece of clay. You can use your knife and you can start to build down. It also gives, with these knives, it gives quite a nice texture as it goes down. And then you can build up more clay like that if you want to. You can have it so it has a bigger structure on each arm going down if you want to. And then you can smooth it out if you want, but if you like the texture, great. And then you might want to as well, so I've done that one there that's a bit larger, you'd probably want to do that on each of them. And then right at the end, get yourself something to add texture. And then what you will have noticed as well is starfish have little dots on them, things like that. Again, you could apply some more. You could even have just stripes going up if you want to build in that. again, follow the line of the clay you've made, because that's what naturally would happen. The line would be followed. Okay, like this. And then what we want to do is make him look like, or her, I don't know, he is, or her, sort of situated within the rest of it quite nicely. So when you get to adding it, let's put that in the middle, let's hold it up so you can see it better. When you go to adding them on, you can start to think, okay, maybe it could be curling around that like in a rock pool. Maybe you could lengthen it out, and again, you're scoring and slipping all of these, and you're going to build up the starfish like this. Okay, and then what I'd do is I'd probably bring the coral around here, and I'd probably bring some coral out of here. I think these tentacles, I'd want to build those up and make them sort of maybe go over the top of the starfish. Okay, but it's according to your design. But remember, you can change your design if you think, no, I understand now, if I add more coral on, it'll look a little bit more natural and authentic. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. And hopefully you've got some tricks for this lesson to start building up your main shapes. So the reason I showed you the smaller areas is so that you know if you are going to apply something on, it's going to be tricky for you to obviously go in there then and add marks, then at least you've got a bit of a base of texture. But today really is about making all of the main shapes. Okay, the starfish, the tentacles, you might have some stones, you might have, I'm trying to think what people designed, you might have a jellyfish, an octopus, which I'll show you just quickly in another video, but it's about those main shapes on your pieces of clay now, okay?